Thank you. And welcome to the Township of Whitewater Region's regular council meeting for Wednesday, June 7th at 1 p.m. I'll call it to order at 1:02 p.m. And we will start with our Canadian anthem. If you can cue it up, we'll stand please and face the flag. Please be seated. And our land acknowledgement. As we gather, we would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Next item on the agenda is our adoption of the agenda. So the recommendation before us is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the June 7th, 2023 agenda as presented. A mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Olmsted. Is there any changes or amendments that we'd like to make to the agenda? Good, seeing none, I'll just add that we'll, going forward. Our presentation, item number 7 from the Cobden's Farmer Market, Kathryn Curry. If she is delayed, so if necessary, we'll just kind of slip that agenda item in whenever she's present if we get past that. So if everybody's okay with that friendly amendment to the agenda if necessary. Good, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? This motion's carried. Thank you. So the adoption of the minutes. We have the May 17th minutes from regular council. The recommendation is that the Council of Township of Whitewater Region approve the May 17th, 2023 minutes. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Trim and Councillor Olmsted. Is there any omissions or errors that anyone noted in the agendas that, the minutes that were presented? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? It's carried. Also included in this item on the agenda is a number of committees and boards minutes. The first one being the Committee of Adjustment, Councillor Trim's Committee of Adjustment minutes. The second one is the Beachburg Rec Association. Councillor Bell is the lead for rec. We've asked the community associations to include their minutes if they'd like. That way, from an insurance coverage perspective, our treasurer has a historical place to come and look for any of the activities that they may be approved to function. So it helps with that trackability of events that the rec associations are conducting. And the last one is a copy of the county council minutes. And I will plead guilty for this one. You guys got the 300-page enclosure. It's only supposed to be a 4-pager one. I forwarded the wrong one to the clerk. So I apologize if you read the 300 pages. In the future, I'll get it right and I'll send the summary into the clerk. Good. Next item on the agenda, number 5, is disclosures of interest. Is there any disclosures from any members of council today on any item on the agenda? And none seen. Public meeting is next. We have no public meeting scheduled for today. The next item on the agenda is our presentations, but as we spoke to earlier, we're just going to hold that one to the side and we'll come back to it when Kathryn is able to join us. So next I'll get into the Mayor's address. So since our last meeting on May 17th, I've attended 9 meetings on behalf of Council, as well as the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference in Toronto for 5 days. During this time, we also recognized 2 businesses, the opening of our hometown store on Saturday, and the 10-year anniversary and the opening of the Whitewater Brewery Riverside location. And I think we had a number of members of Council that were able to make it to those 2 things, so thank you. I just want to speak to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference for a few minutes. The conference was excellent, an opportunity to learn from municipalities from across Canada. And interestingly, we share some of the exact same concerns as many of the other rural and small town municipalities. During the 5 days, I had the opportunity to attend a number of workshops that ranged from rural transit and saw solutions that were being implemented in northern BC, and southern Ontario's, again, municipalities or counties that are our size, so it was interesting to see some of their solutions. They were all grant-based, if you're wondering. Anti-racism, equity, and inclusion, just to see how they're furthering that in different municipalities across Canada. And how to obtain infrastructure grants from FCM. They have a very healthy grant pool to facilitate infrastructure, and I've passed that information on to staff. I've also had the opportunity to meet with and obtained information from Airbnb, who was there providing input to municipalities, and I've already put them in touch with staff about short-term rental policy considerations, which was excellent. How some of the communities are using social determinants of health to help guide planning decisions. So it was neat to see how some of the social side of planning is now influencing the actual planners. Some examples from Alberta, actually. And how to engage the public via public meetings and how it can be done better. So if you remember, some of our public meetings we've had so far have been great learning opportunities for everybody. There's a study in BC that's looking at how that can be done better. Can you engage them earlier? How do you engage them so it's not just all done in front of a podium on one evening? So again, something, and I'll pass that information on to staff as well. There was also a very good plenary discussion on municipal fiscal policy and the need for municipalities to seek other revenues aside from property tax and fees to meet community needs. So FCM, as a result of a vote taken by the members present, intends to advocate for a model that would include support from provincial and federal governments based on population and economic growth. So the funding that would be obtained would correlate with your population and economic growth, something similar to what a sales tax does, rather than basing everything on property values. So it's interesting to see how they're trying to find other ways to source revenues for municipalities, because as you know, we're limited to property tax and fees for services. It was an excellent conference overall. The last week of May marked, there's 3 events that I just want to highlight. The last week of May marked Public Works Week, a time to recognize the importance of public works in our daily lives, including all the work that they do to keep our road network safe, our waste and recycling managed, our waste and wastewater systems working. It's important that we all take a moment to recognize just how important and integral public works and lane is to making our day-to-day lives work. So thank you. June also marks Pride Month, which is a celebration of our Pride communities. It's a time for us to recognize the rights and achievement of the Pride community and also recognize that there's still work to be done to support that. June also marks Seniors Month, which is a time for us to recognize the hard work that seniors have done all through their lives to make Ontario the great place it is today. And this year's theme from the province is working for seniors. And I think we're going to have some more to say about seniors later on in the month. Yeah. I also wanted to share 3 highlights from the May County Council meeting. First, our official plan amendment number 34 that adjusts the settlement boundaries for Cobden was approved unanimously across county. I just wanted to thank staff for the work they invested into this project. It's been over a year, if not 2. The input and the feedback that we obtained from the community that guided our decision. And I'm looking forward to the development opportunities that will now be present here in Cobden. So some great opportunities with that official plan amendment number 34. Secondly, County Council supported the purchase of a replacement equipment for the fire dispatch system. Now, although we are only one of 17 partners in this purchase, I'm excited to see the county lead this essential renewal, something we very much need for the safety and protection of our residents. Essentially, it's the system that the actual 911 dispatchers use to dispatch our fire trucks to an emergency. Third, County Council received a delegation from Cindy Phillips. Cindy is the Executive Director of the Renfrew County Community Futures Development Corporation. You might be familiar with it in Renfrew. They do a lot of support for small businesses, mainly in the loan department, $300,000 loans that are available for small business development. And it was incredible to hear all they do to support the business community. They are announcing that they're opening another office in Pembroke, in addition to the one in Renfrew, and now they're also going to be offering loans that match municipalities' community improvement plans. So if we have a community improvement plan for $5,000 to change your sign on Main Street, and we match that up to 50%, so we'll pay $2,500. Community Futures will lend them the other $2,500. So they will be able to take advantage of CIP opportunities in all the municipalities by virtue of a grant and a loan if they don't have the funds up front. So great news, yet another barrier that we're able to take down to support our local businesses. So I hope staff can make a reach out to Cindy on that. The next 2 weeks until our next council meeting has a couple of focuses. First is our continuing engagement with our community organizations for our 21st of June decision on ice operations for the upcoming rink season. Myself, the CAO, and our lead for rec, Councillor Bell, are all involved in that engagement. And next, we are working on the delegations we'll be seeking for the Association of Municipalities of Ontario this August. Staff is working on some of that, and we should see it at the next council meeting. And we will also be leaning into some planning for our seniors pilot, and how do we make this a permanent resource for our seniors in the community. So it's going to be a busy month before we break for the summer. But anyway, that ends my address. Thanks for your time. Good, and I see we've got Kathryn joined us. Good, Kathryn, we're going to skip back to you and the agenda. If you can come on up to the podium. And the green light, I think you've, good. And I don't know, is there a slide presentation we're going to put up?
Oh, there is. I'm sorry, bear with me 1 second.
Good. Just while Kathryn's kind of pending there, can one of the staff introduce Kathryn? Is that possible? And the guest.
Not certain that I can, but I will say that Kathryn and the guests are from the Cobden Farmers Market. So Kathryn had reached out to me with respect to a billboard they have on Highway 17, and I thought it would be advisable that they would make a fulsome presentation to council as it pertains to what their anticipated activities are for the upcoming season, as well as submit a verbal request with respect to that sign. So Kathryn's here today. Maybe Kathryn, you could introduce yourself and your team. Thanks.
Thank you. So my name's Kathryn Curry. I'm a vendor with the Cobden Farmers Market. I also have with me Patricia Van Gelder, and she's the president of the Cobden Farmers Market. And I'm just going to give a little overview of what the market's about, some things we're doing this year, and then I'm going to talk to you about the billboard. So the Cobden Farmers Market was established as a farmers market in 1992. We're located at 43 Astrolabe Road, where the fairgrounds are with the arena and the agricultural building. And we're open Saturdays 8 a.m. till noon from the May long weekend till the weekend after Thanksgiving. We currently have 28 full season vendors, and then we also have some vendors who come week to week, often produce vendors or vendors who just want to try out the market, see how it is. We have a variety of products there. We have a lot of baked goods, produce, a lot of craft work. We have an indoor building, so we have vendors who are able to leave their stuff there week to week, and therefore, you know, it's pretty full. It's pretty full. No worries. So what's happening this year? We have some theme weeks. We have a Christmas in July event. We're doing an Artisans Week. We have live guests. I believe last year we had bunnies.
Yes, we're going to have it came out of the 4-H rabbit agility. So we have Lorraine Hamilton comes with her bunnies a couple of weeks. Very popular.
Kathryn, sorry, because we don't have the mic picking that up for YouTube. No, that's okay, Patricia.
So we have
But
the
if you can just repeat it, yeah.
4-H club with their bunnies. Lorraine Hamilton, she comes with their bunnies and they do agility courses. We also, I think we do something for the Canada Day weekend. And then we also have live music most weeks. Every week. So also there is the Taste of the Valley, as I'm sure you're all aware. That will be the last market day. This year is October 14th. We're excited for that, and we're excited to be working with the county to refine the event. We also, as a subset of the farmers market, we have the Cobden Market Barn that runs the week after market ends to the first weekend of December. And the Christmas market is also the first weekend of December. We also are doing some building work. I believe some of it's already been done to spruce the building up a bit. And we're also looking to put up some more signage and continue some signs we already have, which segues into the sign we have on Highway 17. I'm realizing how small the photo is right now, but anyone who kind of comes from the Renfrew direction or from Fortress Falls Road, there's a big billboard on the property to the right of the highway. It's a big billboard, and it's on property owned by the municipality. So part of the reason I'm here today is because within 400 meters of Highway 17 requires a Ministry of Transportation permit to have signage, and it's required to be renewed every 5 years. And in this case, we need to renew it now, and the ministry has asked that we have sign off from the property owner to submit that permit renewal. So my ask would be if the township would be willing to support renewing the permit on the property for another at least 5 years. Thank you. I think that's. Oh. And I guess the continued use of the property. Perfect. Thank you. And I'm also available for any questions you have about the sign or the market.
Perfect. I'll open it up to council. Is there any questions or comments you want to make for Kathryn and Patricia? Councillor Moore.
Thank you for your presentation. Any plans in the future to perhaps put up a bigger sign or changing it in any way, or is this going to stay the same for the next 5 years?
Well, we're certainly open to recommendations. I think our plans for now is to keep it the same. I think this year with the permit fee, we don't have much. The permit fee is actually $770, so that's for 5 years. So that's going to take a bit of change. But I think we're certainly open to suggestions. And I believe we also have intentions to put another sign coming in Cobden Road on private property. We're working on that.
That's also a Renfrew County road. It's not a department highway.
No, that
So you
won't.
shouldn't have that $700 fee.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Bell.
Where do the funds for the permit come from? Like, does the farmer's market have a bank account that they utilize for these types of purposes, or how does the funding for that come about?
Yes. So we're a not-for-profit. We have a bank account, and going towards, we pull in fees from vendor tables, Fundraising, we do a lot of fundraising. So we have a bank account that will cover the cost of that permit, yes.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Deputy Mayor.
That's okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation, and great job at that Cobden Farmers Market. It's well utilized, and a lot of people certainly attend, so it's great. I guess that's just moving forward. Do you need a recommendation from council, or how do we move forward to approve that? Or what's the next step?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Let's confirm with the clerk.
So I don't have a microphone, but if you're going to make a motion, if you want to do make a motion to, or a direction, it does need to be by motion.
Yes, okay.
Perfect. Would you like to make a motion, Deputy
I
Mayor?
would make that motion then, please.
So the motion is to,
Support. Do you want to take it away there, clerk? That would be your expertise.
If I could, through you, the mayor, so if we could just perhaps, the motion could read that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region supports the continued use of the land and support the reapplication of the MTO, for the MTO permit, and that staff work with the organization to enter into an encroachment agreement that would formalize that partnership, and that can come back at a later date.
Oh, okay.
So I think we could, push ahead without the encroachment agreement just to get things rolling, but that we formalize that partnership free of cost and all that, just that it's formalized through an agreement. So if our clerk noted what I just said there, perhaps the motion could read that the council support the use of the said lands and the reapplication to the MTO for their permit, and that direct staff to work with the Cobden Farmers Market to enter into an encroachment agreement to formalize the relationship.
perfect. Thank you, CEO. Seconder, Councillor Trim. And any discussion?
That's good.
That's good. The only thing I would add, just before we vote, is if there's an opportunity for the CIP to support this, if we could also include that in the discussions, and if there isn't, understood, but if there is.
Yeah. I would just add, I'm not sure that the community improvement plan is a mechanism to support this. I would just say that when it comes time for the farmers market to renew their sign, we might try to partner with them in sharing that cost so that we could create a consistent vibe with our other billboard signs. I think there's some merits there. So we use a graphic design team, a consulting firm. So certainly we could work with the group to maybe cover the cost for the design if they pay for the sign, or we could work something out like that. But I think the consistent theme of these signs is extremely important for our community. Thanks.
Perfect. Councillor Trim?
Following through you to CAO Burton, could we then perhaps be involved in the proposed sign that they're planning for Cobden Road?
Yes, most certainly. I would say that I'll connect with Kathryn and her team as it pertains to that proposal, and see if they've worked out a design and how we could incorporate that within our design pattern for our billboards and signs. Thanks.
Perfect. Kathryn?
Sorry,
yeah.
just to add to that, because it's out Cobden Road, I believe it ends up being in Admaston Bromley.
That's okay. It's still pointed to traffic coming to Whitewater. And we're very proud of our farmers market, if you can't tell. I think it's a good partnership and a way for us to make consistency. The only other thing I'd add, sorry, Councillor Bell, I think you had your arm up. No. Is I noticed that some community organizations are using magnetic bases of their signs. So as an example in yours, the bottom panel could be made as magnetic. Just peel it off, put on a new one. And you could change it out for different themes that are occurring in that time. And it's there is some design fee, but that it may be worth exploring, especially if you're going to go to the work of replacing it. Good. Any other comments? Excellent. We'll call for a vote on that motion. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, Kathryn. Patricia, we appreciate your time today and everything you do. Thank you. Good. We'll move on to item number 9 on the agenda, and this is our public comment section where members of the public could either provide stuff orally or provide feedback in writing to the clerk. So I'll just confirm with the clerk, is there anybody here that would like to make any oral presentations?
No, sorry. The other two aren't working, so no, I've received none. Oh, I forgot that. Yeah.
Okay. And there's none received in writing?
Email, writing, nothing, no comments. Sorry. Thank you, I forgot that she wasn't here.
Excellent. Okay, we'll go on to number 10, reports. So our first one is a 2023 tax rates. The recommendation is that the Council of Township Whitewater Region pass a bylaw to approve the 2023 tax rates as presented in this report. And I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Olmsted, seconded by Councillor Bell. And over to our treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report before you is the calculation for the rates for all of our property tax classes within the township. The rates are based off of the original levy that was passed through our budget bylaw that was passed on February 15th, 2023. So it uses the tax rates that are created by the county to set our residential and then the following tax rates. So in this amount, 83% of our municipal levy goes through the residential property tax class. 6% comes from our commercial and 5% our farm. And then the remaining 6% flows through our industrial and multi-residential and those type of property tax classes. The total weighted CVA, which is whenever you actually go through our actual assessment, which has not changed for 2023 due to the fact that MPAC has not redone an assessment of properties. Weighted assessment is based on the assessment times the original tax ratios that are set by the county. So that gives us our $954 million weighted assessment, which is used to calculate the actual rates. This year, the township saw a 1.86% increase in that weighted assessment, but the highest in a year we've ever had is 2014 at 1.94. So if you look to the financial implications portion, you'll see that the total increase, that includes education, county, and our municipal levy, would be $56.18 on $100,000 worth of assessment, which is a 4.69% overall increase. Our levy itself adds up to $46.30 of that total. Education did not change, and the county only had an increase of $9.88 of that $56.18. So for comparison, if a property was valued at $194,000, the increase would be $109 to their overall tax assessment. And then, so our next steps are, once this is approved, I send this into Opta, it's entered into our system, and then the tax bills would be set to come out in August. Any questions?
Members of council. Yes, Councillor Olmsted.
So this subject is very near and dear to my heart. Thanks for the work on this, by the way, Curtis. I had heard over the past 3 or 4 months about the 9% increase. I'm sure most members here have. I'd really recommend that we become better at communicating that levy increases versus property tax increases, because I've heard a lot of people think they're getting a 9 or 10% property tax increase, and that's they don't understand the difference between how property taxes and levies coincide. So for instance, if you look at the end of the day, all things considered, we're talking about a 4.9% total tax increase, not a 9. So I just think the overall messaging from us, and I don't know how we go about educating homeowners on the correlation. It's a very complex calculation, to be sure. I think you need an MBA, you need to be a treasurer or something to figure it out most times. But I just want to assure people that growth is good. We've had a lot of growth that has taken a lot of the bite out of this for us. But if we just kind of be a little bit better at communicating how taxes work. I know staff, I've talked to many staff, and they were inundated after after we passed the 9% levy increase. Again, people not understanding how the relation to property taxes. Thank you.
I think that's a great comment, Councillor Olmsted. I know our previous treasurer, when we did the budget process, he provided a short video clip that helped outline that. Does staff remember that? If that's available on our website, or even maybe sent out to the members of council to remind them, and that they could either share it or be more informed when they're communicating with members of the public. That might be and if Councillor Olmsted, if you think of another way that we could increase that communication, please share with us your ideas. Good. Councillor Bell, any comments from you as a seconder? Good. Any other members of council? Councillor Moore.
Just one, I do remember this conversation back when we were working on budget, and where the 9% come up, I think was for the water and sewer users. By the time you added that in, it come up to almost 9%. So this way here, if you live out in the township, in the country, you know, be 4.69% increase, but for people in the village of Cobden, it could be closer to that 9% once you add the increases for water and sewer. That's all I have to say. Does you remember that conversation, Councillor Olmsted?
Kind of, yeah. I'd caution not to combine the numbers. They really are two, or I guess three, because in Cobden, not everybody's on water and sewer. Some are just on water. Some are water and sewer. So I just, anybody that's talked to me about it, I stress them, don't combine the numbers, because they're all their own entity. Yeah, that's all I can say about that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from members of council? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And motion is carried. Thank you, Treasurer.
Thank you.
Next item, 10.2, is our 2022 year-end report. That the Council Township of Whitewater Region approve, 1, the 2022 audited financial statements prepared by McKillen and Associates, and accept the management letter for information purposes. 2, the 2022 development charge report as prepared by the Treasurer. And 3, the 2022 annual report on building permit fees. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Olmsted, seconded by Councillor Trim. And I'm turning this back to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So before I get into my report portion, I'd like to introduce the accountant who performed the actual audit, who will be actually presenting the financial statements today, Rory Richards from McKilligan's. So I'll let him kind of speak first, and then I'll come back to my portion of the report.
Welcome to the mic, Rory.
Does everyone have a copy of the statements within the package? So the pages are numbered, so I'll just reference that plus the title. So I'll just go over on a pretty high level. If anyone has any questions, you can just stop me, and we can hopefully answer those questions. The first page is the independent auditor's report. I won't go through the 4 paragraphs, just mainly the important one, the opinion paragraph. And in this case, it states the auditor's conclusion is that we believe the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects, which means it's a clean audit opinion. There's no issues with the statements, and it's a clean audit report. If we move on to the first statement, it's a consolidated statement of financial position. That's similar to a balance sheet in a for-profit entity, but for a municipality, it's a financial position. I'll just go down through the various line items. The first area, financial assets, cash equivalents. Cash did increase by $478,000. That just relates to the surplus for the year, increase in accounts receivable, and also advances from OILC. And then there's also development charges of $183,000 resulted in the increase. When we look at the statement of cash flows, it'll provide a lot more detail on where cash was generated within the municipality. Taxes receivable, they did decrease by $37,000. The outstanding amount for taxation is 7.34 of your total taxation. In the prior year, 2021, it was 7.9, decreasing, but you're always kind of related to the previous conversation, as your taxation increases, sometimes it's hard to collect that. It's a good reflection on staff, because that is a low number if you look in comparison to municipalities in Renfrew County and also in the province. And if you don't keep control of your taxes receivable, it can tie up a lot of cash for the municipality, and results in either using your operating line, which can cause interest charges. So it's a good reflection on staff of keeping that number low and decreasing. The next item is accounts receivable. There's a decrease of about 28,000. Within that, there's water sewer of 183. There's due from the federal government of about 190,000. That's HST. And the province of 99,000, which relates to a grant, and then the ICPI for the Beachburg Arena of $97,000. And then the last item is investments. That's the Ottawa River Power investment. There's no change from year to year. You do receive interest and dividends on an annual basis, but the overall investment did not change. So total financial assets for the municipality did increase to just over $3.1 million. The next area is the liabilities. Operating line, you see, was reduced to a nil balance in last year. Prior year, there was a small balance. This relates to a timing issue in cash flow. Accounts payable, there was an increase of $647,000. That's just more of a timing issue when items are paid versus before year end or just after year end. There was a due county of 310, trade payables of just about $1.4 million, related to Ontario Clean Water of $115,000, and deferred revenue about $72,000 make up the balance. The Ontario Infrastructure and Land Corporation advances. This relates to Olmsted Road of $2,425,000, and then Cameron Street reconstruction of $700,000. These amounts were advances when the construction was ongoing. They're going to be termed out, and they'll move down into net long-term liabilities in the current fiscal year. Obligatory reserve funds consist of the gas tax and development charges. Obligatory reserve fund is a fund that has outside restrictions imposed on it, what it can be spent on, and items also have to be kept in a separate bank account from the general account. Net long-term liabilities, you see, we're just over $10.5 million. There's new debt of $298,000 related to the plow truck, but there were payments of $640,000 paying down the long-term debt. And then the last item is the landfill post-closure costs. These are the estimated closure and monitoring costs for the landfill when it will be closed. So total liabilities were just over $16.5 million, resulting in net financial liabilities of $13.3 million. The non-financial assets, these are assets that won't be used, won't be turned to cash in the near future and are used for the ongoing operations of the municipality. The first item is the largest under the tangible capital assets. It's the gross amount of assets less any amortization, and it's $46 million, it's about $600,000. There were additions of $5.5 million last year, and amortization of $1.9 million. The main additions were Cameron, Earl, and Vera Street of just about $1.7, and then Olmsted Jeffrey Lake Road of $800,000, and then the plow truck I also mentioned previously. Under inventory supplies, these relate to gravel of just over $270,000, sand of $56,000, and then fuel of $35,000. And then the last item is prepaid expenses, and this relates to continuing education and iCity subscription of just about $14,000, resulting in non-financial assets of just about $47 million, resulting in an accumulated surplus of $33,590,000. And you can see the accumulated surplus, what it's comprised of, which is the equity and TCAs, and then also the reserve and reserve funds are the main items that build up to the accumulated surplus. If there's any questions on the financial position, we'll move on, and I'll get everyone maybe just to
Sorry,
flip it.
I will interrupt
Okay.
you. I do have a question on it. So just the tangible capital assets.
Yes.
So you gave us a reference point when you talked about accounts receivable, 7.24% and decreasing. Is there a way that we can compare tangible capital assets? Like, can you compare it across municipalities in the same way? Say you compared it to total assessed value, total assessments, to trying to indicate.
I think it'd be rather difficult because it depends on what your services you're providing, your roadways, like say you're a very large geographical municipality, but maybe lower roads and not as much sewer and water support. So you'd want to be careful who you're comparing yourself to, like urban, rural, plus the size, and then what services you have.
Okay.
And then you'd also have to deep dive, like, are they reinvesting in their capital assets or not?
Yeah,
Versus-
too many variables.
Yeah.
Okay, no, and you can see, I'm just trying to look for that way to kind of gauge the value of our assets versus the money we generate in order to sustain them. If there's a way to correlate some kind of relationship there, but.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd be better to go back to your, asset condition and your asset plan, and then how, like, where you are in that versus trying to compare yourself to someone else.
Perfect. Oh, thank you. Ted?
Well, on that note, I will ask a quick question on the tangible capital assets. So I see they went up by about $4 million. So how would a road that we just did, for instance, Olmsted Jeffrey Lake, how would you value that into the tangible capital asset? So it has a value before it was done and has a value after it's done, I assume?
Generally, the roads are broken into two components, your base and your surface. So if you're doing a full rebuild, it would replace, I wouldn't say right off, because most of your roads and stuff are fully amortized by now. You're not generally, I don't think there's too many roads that have any value left on the statements when they're being rebuilt.
Right.
So that value would be removed. Well, I would say the gross value and the gross amortization would be removed from the old road, and then the new value would be replaced.
Right, okay, makes sense.
At the full cost of the work.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just your base and your surface are amortized at different rates, because say next time, if you hopefully aren't going to replace the base, you could just do the surface.
Yeah, makes sense. Anything else? Anybody else? We'll move on. Okay, next one, please.
Yeah, so we'll move on to page 16. Instead of looking at the consolidated statement of operations, which does include the library and museum, if we go to page 16, which is the general fund operations, just the township, so it's a bit, I would say it's a bit clear. So in the revenue area, the net municipal taxation was just about 6.9 million. Supplementary taxes were just about 113,000, and write-offs were 38,000. Within that, there's also, made up the total value of taxation. Under user fee charges, there was the collection fees, the sewer fees of 855,000. So it is over budget, just related to supplementaries were over budget by 80,000, which is a good thing. And then write-offs were also under budget by 13,000, resulting in the amount actual being higher than the original budgeted amount. Under government transfers, in Ontario, the Municipal Partnership Fund was $1,165,000. There was infrastructure grants of $1,159,000, and then a recycling grant of $155,000. The infrastructure grants were originally budgeted at $438,000 and were $1,158,000, and also the recycling grant was budgeted at $70,000 and was actual of $154,000, resulting in the amount being larger than budgeted. Under Canada, that's the main item under that is the gas tax funding of $222,000, and then summer student grants of $15,000. And the budget for the gas tax used was slightly higher than the budgeted amount by about $27,000. Under other municipalities, other municipalities, just a minor amount that relates, I believe, to the library, not the library, pardon? Museum. And then under other amounts, that relates to interest on taxation. It's on unpaid tax amounts of just over $142,000. A large amount in that was related to the Westmeath donation of the ramp of $234,000. So when the ramp was completed, in order to record as a fixed asset on the municipal records, they were giving that asset, so it had to be picked up as a revenue item. Arena revenue of just about $205,000, building permits of $148,000, and tipping fees of just over $212,000 are the other main items under other revenue. The Westmeath ramp kind of is what skewed the main item, skewing the budget amount to the actual amount. So total revenue for the municipality was just over $12.5 million in 2022. In the expense area, the general government, the main expense items that relates to council expenditures and also administration expenses. You can see it was slightly over budget related to there was human resource costs. Tax sale expenses were slightly over budget by $20,000, and asset management costs of about $21,000 over budget related to the budget amount. Protection to persons and properties relates to fire, police, building permits, and emergency measure items. Fire came in around just over $615,000. The largest expense within that is the policing costs of just over $1 million. Building permit costs of $269,000, and within that there's also amortization of $148,000. It's slightly over budget, but fairly close by $20,000. So as a percentage, that's very, very close and within reason. Transportation services. This is the largest cost of the municipality. It relates to obviously road work and winter control costs. We had material costs of $1.6 million, interest costs of $61,000, and then within that there's also amortization costs of $1.2 million. The main items related to it being over budget relates to fuel and oil, which was budgeted at $150,000, but actual costs were $275,000, and then equipment repair costs are budgeted $145,000 and came in at $250,000. Under environmental service costs, this relates to the landfill and also sewer and water. There's contracting costs of $1.5 million, material costs of $600,000, interest costs of $250,000, and amortization costs of $346,000. The sewer contract cost did come in slightly above cost at $20,000, and then maintenance costs for the sewer were also slightly above cost, about roughly $20,000. Health and services, this relates to assistance to aged persons. The difference in budgeting relates to program costs that were originally budgeted just over $3,000, and we're actually over $30,000. Recreation and cultural relates to the library costs of 126,000, parks of just about 350,000, recreation facilities of just about 593,000, amortization of 120,000. Cobden arena salaries were under budget by about 40,000, resulting in the the actual cost coming in under budget. And then the last area is the planning and development. Relates to planning and zoning of 195,000, economic development of 65,000, and it came in under budget also, just related to salary and benefit costs. So total expenses for the municipality were 11,148,000, resulting in excess revenue over expenses of 1,365,000 before transfers. And then the next area, you can see the items that were transferred, the areas that this municipality transferred funds. There's the library transfer of 85,000, the historical society of just about 8,000, and then there's transfer from to reserves. So there's a transfer from reserves of $547,000. When we look at the statement of reserves, we'll kind of provide a bit more detail on that. The change in landfill and post-closure costs, and then the transfer to equity and tangible capital assets of $1,840,000. So the net transfers equal to the excess revenue over expenses, resulting in the change in surplus of nil for the year.
Good, we'll pause there for a second and see if there's any questions or comments. Yeah, Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I know you mentioned health services. I couldn't quite hear what you were saying about why was there none in 2021 versus 22?
It relates to the seniors assistance, which is a new program. That's, I believe, the town municipality spearheading for a couple different associations. That's why there was none. It's a kind of a brand new program that's been implemented.
Right, yeah, I'm aware of it. Good, thank you.
And I'll just add, I think the difference, a portion, if not most of the difference that we notice in the expenses, there was revenue to offset that. Yeah, and so it would have shown up higher there and under other. Good, is there any other questions? Good. There was one I just wanted to ask you to re-emphasize, if you could please, Rory, is just the first item, net municipal taxation, the difference between that. You described 3 different things that made up that difference. Supplemental, could you repeat
There's
that?
supplementary taxes, which are, can relate to new builds or improvements. So it's when MPAC comes in and reassesses your property for a change. So those will be sent to the municipality periodically through the year. And then they can go back, I guess, multiple years depending. So then that's new, I guess, taxation that's billed at the rate that was applicable when the improvement happened. And then kind of the opposite side of that is write-offs, which means if you, I guess you could have a disagreement with MPAC, or maybe there's a change in your property and they'll reassess it and they'll say, oh no, it's actually worth less. So then they'll have a refund or on their taxation. So
such as a fire or something if it burnt down.
Yeah, like say there's an old building you tear down or something like that. So, or if you change classes, like sometimes say you have a property that was a storefront or commercial and you change it to residential, that change in class would also reduce the taxation, or could vice versa increase it.
Good. So the difference that we saw between budgeted and actual for 2022, that's not a reoccurring, something that reoccurs. It could go either way. There could be a lower value at some point.
I doubt it would be lower, just from people always improving properties and stuff like that. Like you just may not get the same amount of an increase on an annual basis.
Perfect. Good. And I just wanted to highlight the staff effort on the number of grants that we got. That's a pretty substantial number. So a lot of work goes in behind the scenes in order to process those grants, spend those grants, report on those grants. Beautiful to see the numbers, and they're higher than the actual was higher than the budgeted. And I just want to acknowledge the staff effort that took. And the last question I had, if there's no other members, is just the Westmeath ramp. I know you said 233,000, 235,000, something to that effect.
That was the amount that was contributed. The total cost, I believe, was around 298 or something. I'd have to check for sure, but the municipality funded some of it, but the other amount was what the association.
No, and that's perfect. I just, in case somebody was watching that had those numbers at hand.
Yeah.
So a portion of it was already contributed. And I believe if is that net of tax? The tax?
Well, it'd be your portion refundable. Yeah, everything's net of the refundable portion.
Perfect. Good. That's all the questions I had. Anything else? All right. Is there another item?
We'll maybe just won't take long, look at page 19. That's the schedule of reserve and reserve funds, and I won't go through the dollar amounts, but it's just kind of showing what the contributions from the general fund, and then also the transfers out to operations and for the purchase of tangible capital assets were for the year. So change in reserves did decrease, but majority of that was for tangible capital assets purchases, like reinvesting in the municipality. And then just the bottom is how the reserves are broken down, or what they're earmarked for future use. So.
Any questions from members of council on that item? None? Does that conclude your part?
Yeah, I'm not going to go through it, but there is a portion of the, which is the notes, the financial statements, which you'll see no references.
Perfect.
It just provides a lot more detail. Like if you want to know what the individual loan balances are and that type of information, it is in the financial package. Well, the notes go from page 6. The first note, the significant accounting policies. It's fairly long and dry, but they had note 16, or 15, sorry. So 6 to 15 is the notes, but I would maybe concentrate just from page 9 to 15 has the information.
Perfect. No, it's just, and that also just helps anybody that might be watching just to be able to circle in on those pages if they wanted to investigate some of those notes further. Good.
Okay.
At that point, Rory's going to stay with us while you do your part of the report. Perfect. If there's no other questions from council, we'll move back to the treasurer. Thank you so much, Rory.
Thank you, Roy, for coming in. So for the rest of my report, there's a section where we have to report on development charges every year. So in the year, we wound up collecting $159,216 of development charges. $6,000 was towards water, $6,000 was towards wastewater, and $147,000 was due to just the residential development and one commercial. In total, there was 49 residential development charges made and only one commercial. So, yep.
Pause you for a sec so we can find page 40 on our package.
Yep.
Can we just flip to the page 40? Just, it is a large
40,
report.
40 the report, yeah.
And I'm scanning back and forth.
There it is, yep.
Perfect. Okay. Excellent.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good.
So that gives a total amount of $201,432 sitting in our reserve right now for development charges, which will be used for development that has to do with growth in the township. So nothing has been spent in year, but that will be coming as projects get progressing to fund that development. So it can go for any of these specified areas, so services related to a highway, fire protection, any type of increases that are related to growth, that's what we can spend this money on. So there just has not been no spending of that yet, but it is looking forward in the future. And then the other portion of the report was the annual building permit fees report. That one is just through the Building Code Act. It's required that we look at the revenue that's taken in versus the expenses to make sure that the actual revenue we're generating does not overdo the expenses. If it does, we have to actually put that overage to a reserve for future capital or other expenses. So this year we did not pull in more revenue than expenses. You can see the comparison between our direct costs, which are our wages, training, and benefits. The indirect costs are our amortization, our office use, and other costs that have to do with just the specific building, so like the vehicle maintenance and those type of issues. So that totals up the total cost. So if you compare the total revenues to total costs, you can kind of see how they go between. What's not included in these total costs is the amount we budget for every year as a reserve transfer. We tend to do that every year just to kind of pre-plan for a capital purchase, which was like the vehicle that was purchased there 2 years ago. And then just for your information, the lower portion is the total construction value, and you'll notice that it goes up substantially in about 2021, 2022 to around, like in last year for 2022 was $32 million worth of construction value. It does not directly relate to the total assessment we'll see. That's the construction value. MPAC does their assessment based on the available structures in the area to get a value, but that's the actual value that was placed on or was given to the building department whenever we put out what they expect the value of the building to cost. And then below that, you'll see the actual numbers of total permits issued. Last year was 305. Any questions?
Good. Councillor Olmsted.
Maybe just a comment. I know we've been talking about the growth of our township and how we've exploded the last few years. This is a great report. Thank you, Curtis, for putting a visual together here. So if you look at the top chart there at 2018 of total construction value of $13.5 million, the next year it virtually doubled in 1 year, which we've been chasing growth since I was born in this region, and to have it double in 1 year is tremendous. And you can see the next few years that follow. Of course, these are COVID years. With the exception of this year, we're kind of back on track, but that growth stayed. Like it didn't double overnight and then revert back to previous levels. So we're triple right now this year, or sorry, 22. You're looking at tripling the value of 2018, which again is tremendous. And it's not just value. So if you look at the chart down below, Curtis has been good enough to give us the number of permits issued. So if you look at 2018, you see 180 in that left-hand column, farthest left. 180 permits issued to last year, from virtually 2019 to 22, almost 300 a year. So again, we're almost doubling the amount of permits issued. And I'd like to know what they looked like before 18. Like what did 17, 16, 15 look like? Because I think 18, if I recall correctly, was actually a pretty good year for us as well. So we're just basing it on that 18. So the township is doing very, very well. As you can drive down almost any road now and see growth and development, new housing and businesses and that kind of stuff come along. So really good job by council as well. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No. Can I get you to slide back? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Treasurer.
I will put out there that the figures that I have in my report for that were provided by the CBO. He did all the number crunching for what actually runs through, and then he provided them to me just for this report side. So just to give credit where credit's due.
Thank you. To the development charges one. Just to renew, I know we've spoken to this before, and if we can just walk through, how does the expenditure of development charges, how do we incorporate that into our business planning process? I mean, now that we're seeing some numbers that we could achieve things with, how does that incorporate it? Like, what process do we take to use this money to better the community?
So this money right now sits as deferred revenue. It doesn't actually, it's not actually recognized as a revenue at this point. So whenever we schedule an actual project that's going to benefit the community that is directly related to the growth, we can then budget for that item, and that revenue will come out of the development charges. So we'll actually recognize it as the revenue in that year to offset the actual expense, and that's how the purchase goes through. So then we're able to actually see, like, it has to be for the capital infrastructure. That's what that money is earmarked for. So it builds that portion. So when we budget and we look at that piece, this is due to growth is a reason that we have to do this, and it falls within the guidelines of the development charges, then we can use that funding to push forward for that towards that expenditure.
Perfect. Sorry, CAO.
Yeah, I would just add that the background study for the development charges identified specific projects to support the growth that Treasurer is speaking of. So we need to revert back to that background report to see what was supposed to be funded by these funds, and see if we could accommodate that in a future budget. So certainly as we move into the 2024 budget this fall, depending on the priority projects, we could see if they were identified in the background report and see if we could utilize these funds. Thanks.
Perfect. An opportunity to spend. Good. Is there any other questions? Yes, Councillor Moore.
Sorry, back to Ivan. This monies that are collected under this development charge report, I know we've done surveys coming our yin-yang for the last 3 or 4 years. If there's future or upgrades to our reports, can it actually come out of this reserve money, or does it come out of our regular budgets per se?
So if the background study, if it identified a project that an example of which would be like Robertson Drive in Beachburg. It's identified as a project in our DC background study as an upgrade from rural to semi-urban cross-section. So if staff, as part of the budget deliberation, including council, found that that was the road for 2024 or 2025, we could utilize some of these funds to support that project. So they would take in from, I'm not sure if it's reserves or however our treasurer worded it, but those funds could be utilized to support a portion of that project. Does that answer the question?
Sure does. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
No, I think it's pretty clear. I think it's great to have this funds available. Now it's just to line up the items that the DCs were set aside for with our priorities that we did in our strategic planning. So it'll be interesting to see in this budget process to see that. And, for example, where does Robertson Road line up? Because you're not going to fund Robertson Road with $48,000. We're not going to, but at some point, hopefully it builds up enough that it can contribute at least to some part of it. Excellent. Good. Any other final comments, Treasurer or Rory, for that matter? Is there anything that triggered? Do you guys want to share anything else before? None? Excellent. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you for all your time. Good. We'll move on to some tenders. Absolutely. Why don't we take a 5-minute recess? We'll break at 2:11. We'll come back at 2:16, please. Thank you, and welcome back to the Township Whitewater Region Regular Council meeting. We'll re-adjourn at 2:18 after a short recess, and we'll jump back into the agenda. We're at item number 10.3, which is a tender for the Zion Line surfacing and Mansel Hill Road surfacing. The recommendation before us is that the Council of the Township Whitewater Region approve the award of one tender 2023-07 Zion Line surfacing, option A to Greenwood Paving, Pembroke Limited, at a cost of $190,559.85, inclusive of non-refundable HST. And two, tender 2023-08 Mansel Hill Road surfacing, option A to Greenwood Paving, Pembroke Limited, at a cost of $125,054.90, inclusive of non-refundable HST. And a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Trim. And this is going to our Public Works Manager.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, so this report is for two tenders. It's the surfacing of Zion Line, then also the surfacing of Mansel Hill Road. Tender was put out separately for the two roads, but both contained two options, one for double surface treatment and then one for hot mix. The tenders closed on May 18th and were evaluated by Public Works staff, and no errors were found. The project of Zion Line, that was completed in 2022 by Public Works staff. That was reconstructed. Then this year, we placed in the capital budget was to look at surfacing. Additionally, then Mansel Hill with a new project this year that staff will be changing the culverts and do ditching and then placing new base material on the road. Just a note that during the budget process, council did decide that we would wait till the strat plan. One concern that we were getting, it's the time of year as to when we can go out and tender and then actually get the job awarded. So both projects, the surface has been removed, and staff will be starting on Mansel Hill in July. Yeah, so talking with Greenwood Paving, so that they actually the date that they provided in their schedule with the bid, we actually had it moved up. So they're proposing Zion Line would be scheduled for June 26th, and then Mansel Hill would be done in early August. Yeah, so the bids that we looked at, we provided it with option A, option B. The bids are approximately anywhere from 2.5 to 3% more for hot mix asphalt for one lift, and then additional and then double that for two lifts. Staff are recommending option A for both projects due to the vehicle traffic and the number of number of homes along Zion Line and Mansel Hill. Staff reviewed, based on both options, staff reviewed the life cycle cost versus the pricing of tendering, and then also with the budget amount. And staff are recommending go with DST for these two projects. The good news story that both projects are being presented that they'll be under the budget, and there'll be remaining funds in the OCIF funds at the end of 2023 that we would transfer into 2024's budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Lane. Councillor Moore, any questions from you?
Just a comment. It's astounding how much the difference is between DST and paving. So I guess we really don't have an option of what to do unless we want to charged back to the taxpayers. Just out of curiosity, do we know the length of the, off topic here a bit, of the length of road that we're doing on Lookout Road this year? Is it close to Mansel Hill and or Zion Line, or is it around the same? Do you know offhand? You can get it back to me at a later date.
Sorry, I did have that number. I believe it's, sorry, I think it's 2.1, but, sorry, it's 3.1, sorry, kilometers.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's about the same as Zion Line then. Okay, thank you.
Good, and my seconder was Councillor Trim. Any questions or comments? Good, and any other members of council? Councillor Bell.
So with the double surface treatment, like Councillor Moore said, it's doesn't really look like there's an option, but between that and paving, what is the lifespan of the DST if we do it this year? How long are we expecting that to last? And I guess just as a follow-up before the answer, I've heard a lot of comments from the public about maybe the quality of the DST over a number of years on a couple different projects where either the quality wasn't there or something with the workmanship wasn't there, and it's degraded more rapidly than maybe what it should have versus DST that was done 10, 15 years ago. A lot of that could be hearsay, a lot of it's anecdotal, but do you have a comment just on DST quality today and the actual treatment that we'll be laying down versus what we've done 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, thank you. I can't speak of the quality of workmanship, but the big factor is the amount of traffic and the amount of the type of traffic. One thing we've noticed as staff, like large farm tractors and then large trucks, definitely take abuse. It's hard to judge there's a lot of factors when it comes to the life of a DST and an asphalt road. The big factors is, again, I think it's the volume of traffic, and then also with the type. That's one thing we're going forward this year. We're one of our goals for this year is to have a whole picture of our traffic within the municipality for each road segment. That will help to push the 10-year and 20-year capital plan for roads. And that way it would identify if it should be a DST road versus an asphalt road, and we can actually budget for that. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up to that then, so with the lifespan being very dependent on its use and the amount of traffic, the type of traffic that's on there, with the survey or the scan that we're doing I think it's at the end of this year and at the end of the summer, is there a way that we're going to be able to correlate those results with, like, are we looking forward and basically saying these are all the roads that we own, these are the ones that should be in asphalt, these are the ones that should be in double surface treatment, these are the ones that are in gravel, and basically make that plan like into that tender, like I guess that's kind of what you were speaking to at the end of that answer then?
Yeah, then that's the plan, and also would help with the project that we've done in the last 5 years, for example, for DST. Once we get the scan back, and they have to analyze the quality, like the PCI index of each road, and determine does actually, like, and also with the traffic volumes, is there a certain volume that will help that it definitely degrades a road more than less of a traffic. So it's one thing. Once we get the information back, we're going to analyze and have a report, a policy basically what roads, when does it come, is it a gravel road, DST road, or asphalt, and there's many factors, not just traffic volumes. There's also a number of homes, if it's rural versus urban. So that's one thing we'll be bringing forward, hopefully in Q3 or Q4 of this year for budget.
And currently, we don't have that policy as
That's
far
correct.
as, so it's just basically we've been kind of ad hoc as we go, deciding which road is doing what in any given year, but we haven't had a policy as to which roads get which then.
That's correct.
Okay.
Good. I'll just, Councillor Trim, I'm going to let you speak for just a second, but there was a policy, I think it was developed in 2014, an asset management for the roads, but it wasn't maintained. And if you don't stay on top of it, you're not monitoring the traffic changes, not monitoring how the roads conditions are changing, it becomes as useless as the paper it's on. So the point for council will be, once we have this done, we have to keep referring back to it year after year to use it, to keep it as a measurable tool. Councillor Trim's got some experience in this area. Do you want to comment?
Yes. I'm wondering if it's ever been considered to, after, on a surface treated road, after 5 years or whatever the appropriate number of years would be, to do, when you see it starting to degrade, to put a single treatment on top to extend the life, rather than spending really a lot of money on patching. I'm just wondering if that was ever considered.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one part of it with the whole life cycle, and that will help. The one challenge is like where if DST, the recommendation is 5 to 7 years to do your third treatment. The one challenge is if you don't have a plan, it's hard to defend that, why that road getting additional funds toward it when the neighboring road hasn't been done in 20 years, for example. So by having a plan and then having a life cycle inputs in it down the road, that will help staff and council have the whole plan going forward for the road.
Thank you. Is there any other? Yes, Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, to Councillor Trim's comment, I think that was the plan for Zion Line years ago. And we waited just a little bit too long to get that. I think it was the second treatment, but maybe it was probably the third treatment. And you saw the road degrade quite rapidly. Of course, a lot of heavy vehicles were on that road. I think it's one of the most traveled roads in our region. Just a question on, I know Zion Line, the road has been sitting for about a year, which from any conversations I've had, that's about the proper time to go ahead and do the double surface treatment on it, as the road's now settled. Any comments on Mansel Hill? Do you think, so we're going to do some work, I know coming up in June, and I see that road would be double surface treated August 28th. Do you think the road will be settled enough by that time?
I definitely will. With our staff and correct building like process, which would definitely help with settlement. The one advantage that we've switched from tearing off the DST to actually pulverizing, which helps the base. So we're actually putting less gravel on the road, so there's less chance of settling.
So, if I may, sorry, just describe that again. So we're not removing the old DST, now we're pulverizing it, leaving it there?
That's correct. So the last one we've changed in the last year or so, with the addition of a new road super, so previously we always tore it off but now we actually pulverize, so it mixes it in with the base material, which helps build the road. So then we can put on less gravel on top, which ultimately saves the whole capital project. Because it's not just, like you've seen in the report, it's not just the DST, it's also the gravel, which is included in doing it, and all the culverts. And then one thing to note that with the capital project, currently we do not include staff time or equipment. What's one recommendation that through our financial return that we should be doing that. So in the future, with tracking staff time digitally and actually have a true cost, what it costs for a road. Because one analogy that was to hire a road right out from scratch to versus doing it in-house. Right now we're not comparing apples and apples. Because we are missing the key of that staff time and also the fuel and equipment time.
Great, thank you. Makes sense on that, by the way.
Excellent questions today. Councillor Moore is next. And Councillor Bell? No. Okay, Councillor Moore.
Just one comment on Councillor Bell's question. And for all the council members now sitting around this table, 2018, Morris Street in Beachburg was redone and repaved, done with pavement. And I've been walking a lot since I retired, so I welcome every one of you to go for a walk. It's falling apart. It's what, 7, 8 years old? And we're starting to see, well, they started patching it last year. So, and there's more holes coming this spring. So nothing is as good as it used to be, which is very unfortunate, but it is what it is. So I welcome you to go tour it if you want to see the difference between double treated and the breakdown of the asphalt as well. Thank you. That's on Morris Street in Beachburg. It's not a very long road. It goes from Anderson to Beachburg Road at St. Andrews United. So it's not very long, but it's uphill both ways.
Thanks for that, Councillor Moore. Is there any other questions? I just want, oh yeah, Councillor Bell.
Sure. Just one follow-up to that last point. Like, so that 97,534, that is, so it's for pulverizing culverts granular, but that doesn't include any of the man hours, any of the gas, any of the vehicles. None of that is included in that $97,000 then.
That's correct.
So yeah, I definitely, just to your point, I definitely like to see something in place in the very near future where, because if we are budgeting whatever our budget was for that, I believe it was in that 230, or like we're coming up very close to that, but if we're not including all the man hours that come in between now and, you know, July, whenever Greenwood shows up to do that, we don't really have a clear picture if we're falling within that budget line, right? Which obviously we won't if that all goes on top. So that, I think for budgeting purposes, definitely starting next year, we should try to include that into our, so like you said, we have that apples to apples compare. Obviously it's on the radar, but that's definitely something that I'd like to see.
So yeah, and just to clarify the budget amount of the 255,000, that budget amount did not include staff time or equipment time, but it's good practice to have all the costs. So when we do our FIR, that the true cost would be cost that, because if, for example, if we hired Mansel out, the cost would be a lot greater that we would show in our return. But again, we're not showing that with the.
Good. Is there any other questions? It's a good conversation today, and this is important because roads are us. Can I just get you to go back up to the table for one of the quotes, one of the two quotes, or higher? Yeah, say that one. Okay, both of them. Perfect. So the first comment before we talk about the tables is just that comparison. Like right now, we say it's in the financial statement that just got presented in the previous item was $4 million for transportation. Well, a portion of that is capital. So some of those hours, our public works is doing capital work. The rest is operations. So it's not being divided up proportionally. That'll come with this cost capturing that Public Works Manager is trying to implement, I believe, and give us a better idea what the true apples to apples is. The second thing is when I look at these totals, and I'm not going to suggest that it changes any of our deliberations today, but I'd love to see the comparison, because everybody tells me asphalt's the better thing. We should be investing in asphalt versus DST. Well, you know, if option A is 15 years and option B is 30 years, then I should be able to get a per year cost. And what's the better investment for our tax dollar? Well, the cheapest one that lasts the longest. Then you have to compare in all these other factors he's talked about. Maintaining it year to year, the second lift, the third lift, the patching the cracks, all these other things, plus the type of traffic and the amount of traffic, and then where it is in the community. So a lot of variables that have to be managed, but all with the intent that us as council, we want to make the decision that's the most effective, cost effective, to deliver the service of the level of service that we want. And I think it's very clear. We know where we want to get to. Staff have received that. We will get to that. And then we're going to have to be faced with probably some other significant decisions to say, can we afford to do what we want to do? And go from there. Is that fair? Good. If there's no other questions or comments, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And your motion is carried. Public Works Manager, go spend money. Okay. Good. We'll move on to the next item, 10.4. This is a tender again for a compactor. The recommendation is the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the award of tender 2023-09 to United Rentals of Canada Incorporated for the purchase of a 2023 BOMAG BMR 7070D at the cost of $22,091.03 inclusive of non-refundable HST. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Bell. And back to our Public Works Manager.
Yeah, thank you. This is another piece of equipment that was in the 2023 capital budget. Tenders were released back in April, and with tender 2023-06, none were reserved. No bids were received. Sorry. Staff reissued the tender, and it closed on May 18th, and we actually received 4 tenders, as shown in the report, ranging from 20,000 to approximately shy over 27,000. Staff went through each bid and found that the lowest bidder did not meet the specifications within the tender, and staff are recommending going with the second lowest bidder, which is it's a BOMAG BPR 7070D. And this equipment will help with installing culverts and also in our capital projects for roads. The price did come in just over $7,000, was over budget, which staff are recommending that the shortfall would come from the capital reinvestment reserve. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council? I'll start with Councillor Moore. You moved it.
No, I have nothing. I was happy that we were able to get some tenders and move ahead with this, because this has been something that's been talked about for years, and it'd be nice to get it in-house and in use. Thanks.
Good. Councillor Bell?
Yeah, is the compactor something that our fleet mechanic is going to be able to work on pretty efficiently? Like he's worked on these before and without many issues?
That is correct. Our two mechanics, they deal with heavy equipment right down to small lawnmower stuff, all in between.
So they're pretty familiar with these, like with the Husqvarna, the BOMAG, and the different versions and all that. And so all I'm kind of getting at is, so just because it's the second lowest bid, there's 3 different options on there, right? There's the D, the LG 504. I have no idea what the differences between those 3 are, but in the opinion of the fleet mechanic, this is kind of the best option for the best bang for your buck kind of deal?
That is correct. Now, again, when we first opened the bids, the lowest tender was quite a bit lower, but actually going through the tender and myself and the superintendent and the fleet mechanic, we went through it, and we suggested that because it wasn't meeting spec, that we go to the one that did. We actually did go out with and price out pricing with canoe procurement, which is part of AMO, that we can go out and pre-secure bids. But tendering in this case was actually cheaper than for the exact same model of BOMAG. So in this case, it actually turned out. So we did some. Staff did review each tender and went through it, and it was recommended that that the second lowest tender would be the one to go ahead with.
Good. Any other questions from other members of council? None? Okay, I have another comment. Sorry. I'll apologize in advance. This is an example of a new asset. So we never had a plate compactor before. So the questions, and it's small and easy, but I'll use it as the example. Do we have a place to store it? How much does it cost to operate every year? Do we have the skills and the spare parts? How does it affect our operating budget? Because now we have a new piece of equipment that has to be operated. I'm assuming that with this small item, it's inconsequential. You can almost fit it in and reprioritize internally. Is that correct, Public Works Manager?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so, but if, as we decide to purchase anything new or build something new, these are the types of questions that we have to be cognizant of. A capital asset has to be maintained. If we don't maintain it, we're wasting the money we're putting into buying it. The same idea with a road, and Lane brought it up earlier. We build a road, we don't maintain it because we spend the maintenance money on building another road that we should have done years before. What does that tell me? We don't have the money to maintain the assets we have. So when we do approve a capital asset, we should be acknowledging the impact on operating. It's good? Good. Is there any other comments, questions? Yes, Councillor Trim.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the other question that you didn't ask is, why don't we have the money to maintain our assets? That's, I mean, it's rhetorical. I don't expect you to answer it, but I think that's something we should be asking ourselves, is why isn't there the money to maintain the assets we have? I really like your other suggestions about we got to consider before we get any more assets. But that's my comment, Mr. Mayor.
Good, that's perfect. And Public Works Manager.
I just want to note the very valid point, Mr. Mayor. With this equipment here, we have, in the last couple of years, rented a plate packer. And so the cost difference would be fuel would be the same, but it would be the ongoing maintenance. So it would be a cost savings in the long run with this equipment. Could we do spend anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a year on it?
And that's exactly the business case that we expect that staff is going to do. It's just now taking it from these small examples to things like roads and buildings. And we'll get there. Awesome. If there's no other comments or questions, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. On to the next one, 10.5, which is a truck purchase. That the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region provide the Chief Administration Officer delegated authority to authorize an expenditure greater than $25,000 per Section 5.1 of the procurement policy to purchase a 2500 series crew cab truck to a maximum of the allocated budget of $95,000 inclusive of non-refundable HST. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Bell. It's going back to Public Works. Good.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, so this tender was kind of similar to the previous one. We did go out and tender, but we did receive no bids. We did search like the local dealers and was advertised on our website and also Bingo. But there was no tenders picked up, and this is a common practice that we've seen across the municipal sector, that dealers are not tendering for towns and townships. So staff are recommending to go to do a request for quotation with 2 local dealerships. But the caveat would be that to authorize the CIO to make the purchase, because one thing with feedback we've got back from dealers that it takes too long to tie a vehicle up. So can you imagine that? So when a dealer puts in a bid, it could be 2 or 3 weeks by the time they actually get approved, and by then that vehicle could have been sold. So the plan is to go next steps would be to go out and go to local dealerships and close a deal in a few days versus a few weeks. And and by going, and then also going with the request for quotation, it would be that respect of the competitive process and to be accountable to our residents. And as per the policy, we would receive 3 quotes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moore, any comments?
Just a few comments. I am in favor of this proposal. Anybody who's trying to buy vehicles know what it's like sometimes, especially if it's a specific vehicle, which is what we're looking for. This vehicle will be utilized by Public Works in the wintertime, and it's with some of the storms having a hard time keeping up with parking lots, etc. So this will help immensely, considering we're actually down a snowplower operator, and that's the way council decided to keep it. So if we want our Mr. Edie to actually chip in, he needs the vehicle to help chip in with, and he doesn't have that right now. He's been borrowing vehicles, but if it's snowing at the landfill, they want theirs. They don't want to loan it out. So I think it's very pertinent that we move ahead with this deal. Thank you. And this will be the only permission given to the CAO for this vehicle. This isn't carte blanche. This is just for this one specific item. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Moore. Seconder was Councillor Trim. Sorry, Councillor Bell. I saw your hand, Councillor.
So the sander and the snow plow, are those 2 things that we already own and will be added on to the truck once it's purchased, or is that something that we also have to procure?
We'll have to purchase a sander and the plow after. With the budget item, we believe that we can buy all 3 items with it.
So, and this probably be more up to the mechanic and to yourself as the manager, but would it be prudent to look at the vehicles that we have, and for like with plowing with 1/2 ton and 3/4 ton trucks, it's hard on the trucks, right? Like it's hard on the front ends, it's hard on the back, and you're always loaded it up. So I don't know if it would be prudent in looking at maybe outfitting one of the 2 to 3 year old trucks with a plow and a sander, and keep the newer truck for those other purposes, like for other road purposes for the first 3 to 5 years of its lifespan, and then maybe transfer that truck over to the plow. I don't know if that makes any sense or whether that's being considered, and just looking at the trucks that we own, I think there's a 3500 that was from 2009, and so you don't really want to put that on a lighter duty truck, but just maybe something to consider moving forward too.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Bell, for that. And Councillor Trim.
My question was answered. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Perfect. Any other questions? Comments? Good. And I'll just note again, Councillor Moore said it, but I'll just reiterate. We have a procurement policy. We're not saying that policies needs to be amended, but for situations like this is where you seek a change to that policy effective for one purchase. And I think this is the procedure. The staff have demonstrated they've tried everything to work within that policy. This is a good way to make the procurement, and they've come to council for that permission. So I thank them for that approach. Call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Next item, 10.6, has to do with Beachburg Public School improvements and safety. So the recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region enact a bylaw to authorize the township and enter into a development agreement with the Renfrew County District School Board to permit safety improvements on the municipal right-of-way adjacent to the Beachburg Public School. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Moore, Councillor Trim. And staff, this is going back to Public Works.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, if Councillor, if you want to go down to the map, would be easiest to show. The Renfrew County School Board came to us last month to do works on the township's right of way. The problems with Beachburg Public School has been the actual separation of bus versus walkers versus student drop off and pickup. During the project, the buses were solved during the parking lot area, but there's ongoing problems currently with the walkers' safety and also the drop off and pickup area. So the school board has came to us and asked if we can build two projects. One is shown on the screen. It's on Earl Street, which will be a on-street pickup and drop-off area, and also a raised sidewalk for safety. And this one here, this infrastructure would be turned over to the municipality once completed. And then if you scroll down to the next one, the next project is on Malcolm. That they're proposing to extend their existing parking lot, which is on municipal property currently, to add a paved walkway to allow walkers to go from the school grounds to the sidewalk on Cameron. We've been working with the school board through Cameron Street project, and then also this was an additional item that came through, and we've been working, staff have been working with the school board a lot on these two items. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moore, you're the mover.
I do understand where the school board's coming from when you start talking student safety. So my only concern is on Malcolm Street. Along that south bottom end of the sidewalk in red is actually a stand of trees. So I'm not sure how that's going to go. The trees are actually on township property, but were planted by the school board families. So I'm wondering if any thought has been given to trees and or replanting, or how, if we're expected to maintain that, how we get our sidewalk cleaner down there.
Yeah, sorry, if I may, sorry. I will definitely address the trees with the school board, but the area that's shown on Malcolm, the walkway and the parking lot, will be continued to be maintained by the school board.
Great, thanks.
Malcolm and Earl, or just Malcolm?
Sorry, just Malcolm. The difference that staff are recommending that the infrastructure on Earl would be turned over to the township after it's done, and then maintenance would continue. Would start this year, but but after 1 year warranty, then we would assume the sidewalk and the parking area on Earl Street.
Good, Councillor Moore? Okay, seconder was Councillor Bell? Or no, Councillor Trim? It was me, Trim. But I don't have any questions. Okay, perfect. Any other comments or questions from other members of council? Okay, so I just want to be clear, you caught me on that last one with Earl. So the operating costs for that sidewalk, it's a new piece of sidewalk that isn't in our asset management plan, that is going to have to be replaced in 30 years. So we're taking on a pretty significant obligation to maintain that. And I acknowledge public safety, and especially around a school, we can't not invest in something like this. But we have to acknowledge it comes at a cost. You're either increasing taxation or we're not doing something else. Right? Because at some point, we're going to have to replace that sidewalk. Is that understood by everybody? Yeah, Councillor Bell.
So is there, having brought that up, is there any option to be able to sell that portion of the sidewalk to, or gift that easement or that right of way to the school board so that it's kind of off our hands, and then it's also the liability associated with that sidewalk is also kept, because it is right beside the school grounds, right? So just, is that an option? Has that been something that's been looked at?
You can comment, please.
Yeah, definitely, and that's a very good point. The next steps would be to develop a development agreement, but if council wishes, we could enter into a encroachment agreement instead. Basically, that the school board would build sidewalk and the parking lot on our property, but they would maintain it and replacement in the future. So if council wishes, we could do that. Why staff recommended to assume it, because it's very similar to what's on Cameron, and then we're going by for safety wise, we would control the maintenance on it versus the school board. But if council wishes, we could come back with a different type of an agreement if council wishes.
Any reaction to that comment, Councillor Bell?
The school board obviously is ran by the province. The province has deeper pockets than this township, so just looking at, the long-term viability of it and the replacement, 30 years is a long time away, but it's a decision that then you kick down the road. So I don't know what the best answer is as far as, obviously you've thought about it. This is kind of the option that's been brought before us. I don't know, maybe I'll throw it back to you, Lane. What's your opinion on that? Would you, from the township's perspective, as long-term viability, what do you think would be the better option?
If I could just jump in, I think one of the key points here is that the bylaw for this agreement is not attached to today's agenda, so it has to come back to council on June 21st. So the terms of that agreement haven't been fully developed yet. So we'll take in the comments received today. I'm not sure, I wasn't part of the negotiation or the discussion with the school board as it pertains to assumption of that. But certainly I could engage with the school board with respect to that. I think one of the key things is the maintenance piece. So we have a minimum maintenance requirement, and because it's within our right-of-way and being utilized by the motoring traffic, we might have an obligation to maintain it and through our insurance and the like. But the replacement value, replacement cost, perhaps there could be something worked into the agreement that is either a shared cost or fully assumed by the school board or the school. So leave it with us, and we'll work through that over the next couple of weeks and come back to council with our recommendation and the resolution. Thanks.
I think that's a perfect. I think that's a perfect approach. Councillor Moore.
Do we need a motion to state that effect, or just with this conversation in the minutes, it's okay?
It's direction to staff within this recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council? Yes, Councillor Trim.
Yeah, this isn't really that unusual. Quite often, if an entity or developer develops infrastructure on municipal property, they pay the cost for the initial development, and then the agreement is that after that, the municipality maintains and replaces it. This is what happens with a subdivision development, for instance, the developer, and then we get an asset fully done, but in 30 or 40 years, we're doing it over, and it's the understanding. So I'm thinking that this would be more in line with the way that we deal with developers. And I don't know, I mean, if we could get the school board to do this, it would be great. However, I think it's in both our best interests to do it the way it was recommended. My comment.
Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with Councillor Trim. I personally think it's there's nothing more important than safety. I wouldn't want to see anything delayed in the interest of safety. I think we need to do anything we can to make our schools and our communities attractive to new users and current users, and I think this would certainly make the Beachburg School a little bit more attractive, or the community a little bit more attractive to people with young children may want to move in. The only thing I don't really care about the replacement cost in 25, 30 years. I do care about it, but I think we can work it into our overall strategic plan and our asset management. I would just like to be sure that, looking at the figure that's on the screen, it looks like a pile of the work, or not a pile, but the pathway, the paved pathway is actually on their property in the parking lot, and the curb looks like it's near the road. So I'd want the agreement to be clear that we would handle, the township in the future would handle only things that are on township property. No work that we would not enter any agreement that is on Renfrew County School Board property. Thank you.
Good. Any other comments? I'll just respond to the comment about the school board. And to be clear, safety first. Investment in our schools pays off in any community building effort that we're going to do. In a subdivision, we take over an asset, but we get the revenue from the taxation in the subdivision. We don't get that with school property. In fact, school properties aren't taxed at all. So I agree. If it doesn't impose on time, if it doesn't impose on safety or the requirement to have it, sure, try to find a way that we can negotiate with the school board. But otherwise, we support this initiative, I think quite clearly from everybody's comments. It's just a matter of staff try to get it done in the best way possible. Is that clear? Okay, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Good. Next one, a Whitewater Seniors Home Support and Active Living Pilot, the working group terms of reference. So the recommendation is the Council of Township Whitewater Region approve the Whitewater Region Home Support and Active Living Pilot Program revised terms of reference for the MOU working group. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Trim, seconded by Councillor Bell, and I'm switching it over to the Chief CAO.
Yeah, thanks so much. So this present report is to sort of better define the terms of reference of our seniors working groups. Our seniors working group is the Whitewater Region Home Support and Active Living pilot project. So they have a series of terms of reference for that working group. That's substantiated as part of a memorandum of understanding with other agencies in Renfrew County that support our seniors working group. So back in 2021, Council approved proceeding with a Whitewater Seniors Home Support and Active Living pilot project, which is currently still in 2023 today, still a pilot project. As a result of some individual funding we've been able to secure from the province and federal government and other agencies. So in order to support the implementation of a seniors program in our community, we've entered into a memorandum of understanding with Care4, Health and Community Services out of Pembroke and Renfrew County, and the Eganville District Seniors, and as well as the Renfrew area Seniors Home Support. So 3 primary agencies that support our Whitewater seniors. So back in August, we entered into a new memorandum of understanding, and attached to that was the original terms of reference to which we're looking to revise or amend. So what we have before council here is a revision to the terms of reference. And one of the primary reasons why we're looking to move this forward is to try to build a little bit of a bigger team to support our seniors liaison coordinator, Margaret, who's with us virtually today, as you'll have noticed her name on that screen for the last couple hours. Essentially, the current working group includes Margaret, Moira Daou, and Bonnie Johnson, and we're looking to expand that to include 2 additional residents on the working group, as well as add the mayor to the working group. So the transition would be from 2 members of the public to 4. The councillor lead for seniors, currently Councillor Trim, would be supported with Mayor Nicholson with the new terms of reference. They would both serve as co-chairs to the working group, and one of the residents would serve as the chair. And we've also established, as you'll notice in the attachment, the last page of the attachment, sort of a little bit of a sketch or a working group guide chart, which includes 6 areas of activities that have been developed with the current working group. So those are the areas of activities that are being focused on in the upcoming years. So Essentially, these revised terms of reference will support future funding applications. So when we meet with the province of Ontario and when we try to apply for grant funding, they sort of require a governance structure to these organizations. So that this will further support those funding models. And it further lends itself well to the announcement that occurred this week where the province will be opening up will be receiving new applications for seniors active living centers. So these SALCs that the mayor may have been speaking with you over the last number of years. So essentially what we have here is a pilot program exists in other communities in Ontario as fully funded provincial programs, the active living centers, annualized funding year over year over year. So the province has opened up this funding again. So this is kind of what we've been waiting for with our seniors pilot program. So certainly we're enthused by that, and this terms of reference will help lend itself to us, our application to that new SALC. So glad to answer as many questions as I could answer on this. Certainly Mayor Nicholson will be able to assist us with that, and Councillor Trim, and we also have Margaret here as well. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to take them. Thanks so much.
Thank you, CAO, and thank you, Margaret, for patiently waiting for this agenda item. Questions from members of council? I can't remember who moved it. Anything from Councillor Trim as the mover?
No, I think that the CAO gave us a very good briefing on what has happened and why.
Good. And our seconder?
Councillor Bell.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, just a comment, and I know we have a number of organizations in the community that work with our groups of seniors and have their own programs, like the Whitewater Bromley Community Health Center. I don't know if the community paramedic program has been involved with this, but there may be opportunities there to be able to bring them in on some of these meetings and some of the meetings with the seniors working group to try to get them involved too, because I know there's lots of funding out there to be that has been brought into that portion just with my history as a paramedic. So, but I wonder if there's opportunity to kind of bring those organizations in to be part of this working group, or at least be involved with some of these as well.
Yeah, I would just say that monthly there's programming events, and we've engaged with the different organizations, whether it be from the hospitals and the former Amundsen Bromley Health Services, Connect Well now. So yeah, certainly noted the paramedics as another resource to support some of the programming. Thanks.
Yeah. And I believe maybe prior to Councillor Trim being there, we have received letters of support from Chief Nolan and his team. So I know he's aware of it. But you're right, we can't lose track of how to integrate them and continue to integrate them into the program. So that's a good point. We'll take that one aboard. Any other comments from, yes, Councillor Moore?
Thank you to the committee for putting this together. It's nice to see this go ahead. I guess I'm going to look at the clerk now. Can you scroll up to page 2, please? And this is, I think, is a housekeeping event. Keep going.
Page 2?
Yeah, come on down. Right.
Of the report or of the?
Of the report, page 2 of the report. And the second bullet. From the councillor lead for seniors as the chair to councillor lead and mayor serving as co-chairs. Do we have, that mean we have 3 from council on that committee, or just 2?
This is just summarizing the changes. So formerly it was the councillor lead who acted as the chair. That's how the old terms are referenced. Now it'll be both of them serving as co-chairs.
Okay, yeah. Just I got stuck when I was reading that one. And okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Any other comments or questions? So the next step on this is to recruit to fill those other 2 positions, should we vote in favor of this motion?
That's correct. So we'll do some advertising via our social media and webpage, and maybe newspapers. Their applications will go to the clerk, similar to the library board, and then the clerk would prepare a report for appointments to council. So maybe in September, perhaps, after the summer break, we'll see a report on that. Thanks.
If there's no other comments or questions, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Good. Next item, Integrity Commissioner Annual Update. So the recommendation of the Council of Township Whitewater receive the Integrity Commissioner's 2022 Annual Update. And a mover and a seconder. Going to get moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Moore. And this is going to the clerk. Good.
In 2019, we appointed Tony Fleming of Cunningham Swan as the Integrity Commissioner for the municipality. In 2022, we entered into a 3-year extension. So he, and part of the agreement or part of the appointment was that he report annually on any issues or questions or queries or code of conducts that he receives. So this is just a report saying that he did receive one last year, but a code of conduct complaint last year, but no other complaints or questions were asked by him. So it's just to receive this report.
Thank you. Mover, so Deputy Mayor, any comments or questions? Seconder, Councillor Moore, anything? Nothing, any other members of council? Good. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. 10.9, unopened road allowance access easement. So the recommendation is that the Council of the Township Whitewater Region approve the granting of an easement in favor of the owners of 238 Zion Line over a portion of the unopened road allowance dividing Ross Concessions 2 and 3 East Muskrat Lake, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary documents to formalize this request. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Bell. Going to our CAO / assistant planner.
Thanks so much. So ultimately, the report before council is to grant an easement in favor of a property on Zion Line. If we look at the sketch here of the map, the owner currently, the Warrens, own a property that surrounds a portion of Gibson's Lake. That's where the 238 Zion Line is. Between their property and Zion Line, there's an unopened road allowance that exists. An unopened road allowance, which would be the continuous straight line of Zion Line. However, Zion Line, the actual road, diverted to the left or to the west in order to go around the lake, so we didn't have to build a bridge. So ultimately, between the 238, the unopened road allowance, and Zion Line, there's another triangular piece of land, but that's also owned by the Warrens. So their driveway exits Zion Lines, goes over a small triangular piece that they own, through their unopened road allowance, through to their property. Their driveway leads to a house, I suppose, a dwelling at the back of the property. So essentially, the purpose here is to grant them an easement over the unopened road allowance. So that would retain ownership of the unopened road allowance by the township. So that would retain our ownership should we ever choose to provide access to Gibson Lake via that unopened road allowance. Generally, municipalities should retain these unopened road allowances for those access purposes and other utility purposes. As it pertains to financial implications, the township did receive a fee of $250 to support this report and any further actions by the township. The applicant will be required to prepare a survey, and any legal costs will be bound by the applicant. Any next steps would be the registration, the preparation of a survey, the registration of the survey, the transfer, draft transfer, which would then be signed by the mayor and clerk, the acknowledgement and direction, and then that would be registered and they would grant them an easement. The specifications of the easement would form part of the title documents. So we're not going to have an agreement here. There will be some specifications as it pertains to maintenance, purpose of use, obligations from the owners. in their use of the easement. So that'll be stipulated within the title documents, the covenants on title. So no need to have a development agreement in this case. So staff are supportive of this approach and glad to answer any questions if there are any. Thanks.
Thank you, and I think I had Councillor Moore as the mover.
No questions, thank you.
Seconder is Councillor Bell. Good. Any other questions or comments from members of council? None seen. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Next item, 10.10, 2022-2026 Council Strategic Direction. The recommendation is that Council of Township Whitewater Region approve the 2022-2026 Council Strategic Direction and direct staff to prepare developmental work plans to support the implementation. A mover and a seconder, please. I'm going to get the Deputy Mayor to move, seconded by Councillor Olmsted. And back to CAO.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mayor Nicholson. So what you have before you now is our draft, the results of our strategic planning exercise that Council has done in the later part of April or mid-April. So Council, in addition to some of the management staff, met on April 13th. We had an exercise or a workshop facilitated by Eric Lockhart of Lockhart Facilitation. Eric was he led the strategic planning exercise in Pembroke and the county, as well as the county of Renfrew strategic planning exercise. So what we have before us is the results of that. And my report has been presented like this. So my findings after the council workshop and the staff workshop was that there was significant correlation between our current strategic plan, the 10-year strategic plan from 2020 to 2030, and the results of our workshop. So when I noticed these correlations and these similarities, I found that it would be advisable for me to council that we not scrap the old strat plan and adopt the new one, that we would develop what would be called a council strategic direction, which would be supplemental to our existing strategic plan. So that is to say, this is this term of council's direction for staff, for the CAO as it pertains to your objectives, the actions in order to achieve these objectives over the term of council. And our 10-year strat plan would continue to be a guiding document. So we'd have this, our 10-year strat plan, we'd have this strategic direction for the term to help shape staff's, day-to-day operations, our recommendations to council, our high-level projects. So due to that correlation, I felt that it wouldn't be necessary to remove the old strat plan, but develop the supplemental document. So to support council's decision here today, my report speaks to the exercise that took place back in 2019 by my predecessor, former CAO Rob Tremblay. So when that strat plan was developed, the 10-year strat plan, there was a significant exercise that took place. There was a public survey that was out for a month or two. We engaged with stakeholders. I remember when I started, I met with the owners of Kenny's Store. I met with the owners of BEI. I met with the representatives of Magellan. So I met with a variety of stakeholders. So there was a lot of work that was put into that original strategic plan. So I'm cognizant that it exists. It should continue to shape our decisions and the directions from council. So what I did notice, though, is over the last 3 years since its adoption, there are some areas where we've seen slower progress. So that slower progress aligns sort of with the current strategic direction. So where we're seeing less progress during our workshops, that was identified by the members of council and identified by the staff that we need to focus on that slower progress area. The capital debt forecasting, long-term financial plans, our community facilities, paved and gravel roads, which is a topic of discussion tonight, or this afternoon rather. Ensuring that we provide the proper services and our level of services. So I felt that in my recommendation to council here that we adopt this strategic direction as a supplemental document. I think that it'll serve us well over the next term. And when we progress into The subsequent term of council, the 2026, 2030 term, as part of that term, we would do a fulsome exercise to revise our strategic plan, a 10-year plan. We'd see what we've accomplished, and we'd go through a fulsome exercise to revise that strat plan from 2030 to 2040. So the outcome of this is that we have 13 objectives and, oddly enough, 13 actions. These align with long-term financial planning and sustainability, facilities direction, service levels and efficiency, staffing culture, growth and economic development. Within the attachment, the first attachment, the objectives are noted there. There's 13 of them. And then on the next page, there's the actions. So these actions, council would not have seen until this agenda package. So these actions were developed with our leadership team from the staff level. These are the actions that we sort of will take over the next term of council, over this term of council, to ensure that council meets their objectives that they have identified. So these are the individual actions. Some of us, not so much myself, but our treasurer and our planner did prepare a timeline for the financial planning and growth in economic development, and that time frame will be established in the work plan. So the next steps, we would come forward with work plans to council, maybe in July if we have a special meeting, or September, but so that would sort of be the next steps. This would shape our work plans moving forward. So glad to answer any questions. If council wishes to go back to the drawing table, we could certainly do that as well. I leave it up. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Eo. You were first, so Deputy Mayor, any comments or questions?
Thank you. Just thank you very much for this report. As we look forward here, I mean, I think we're definitely on the right track from where we were, and I think we continue going forward, and I do appreciate the work that was put forward here. So look forward to the work plan and see where we end up with it. But job well done. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. And Councillor Olmsted, seconder.
Yeah, I reiterate what the Deputy Mayor said. It's nice to see the work that we just did, I want to say 6 weeks ago maybe, dovetail into this report that was previously started. So fully in favor. Let's pull out all the stops and let's go. Thank you.
Good. Any other comments from staff, from council? None? I'll just echo the comment. Thank you so much. I know the staff put a lot of effort into our first 100 days of, or first 200 days of our term to achieve the budget, to achieve a strategic plan review. We did it all, and I think we're on track, so thank you so much. Good. Nothing else from council? Call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is 10.11. Code of Conduct complaint recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive the Code of Conduct report and add the report as an attachment to the minutes of June 7th, 2023. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by my Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Trim, and Clerk will report on this.
Back in February, we received a Code of Conduct complaint. It was reported to the Integrity Commissioner, who did an investigation. You all received a copy of the report. The only recommendation at this time that we need to do is decide how we are going to report the findings. So in the recommendation, it's just to attach them to the minutes of the June 7th. The report didn't there was no follow-up for the report from Mr. Fleming. So, any questions? No recommendation from him.
Perfect. Thank you. And Deputy Mayor, any comments or questions? Good. Councillor Trim? No. Good. Any other member of council? None seen. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Carried. Next item is notices of motions, number 11. Any notices of motions? Good. Councillor Moore? No. Councillor Trim? None. 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 No notices of motions seen. Next item is correspondence 12A, requiring direction. So the highway dedication proposal to commemorate Lanark and Renfrew counties' military service and sacrifice. The recommendation is that Council of Township Whitewater Region support that a portion of the Highway 17 in Lanark and Renfrew counties be designated the 2nd Lanark and Renfrew Scottish Regiment Memorial Highway to commemorate the tens of thousands of those community soldiers that have served in the regiment over the past 173 years. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Oh, holding up.
Just so you know, the motion should read the 42nd Lanark and Renfrew Scottish Regiment, please. Thanks.
Good, so we'll take that as a friendly amendment. 42nd. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Trim, and this is going to clerk? CAO.
I'll gladly make presentation. Again, this is a first for me and certainly a first for, as I understand it, Clerk Miller. Essentially, we have before us a request from Stuart Warren in order to get council to pass a resolution to support the designation of Highway 17 coming through our community and other communities in Renfrew County and Lanark County. Ultimately, the final decision, as I understand it, would be from the MTO, Ministry of Transportation Ontario, or the province of Ontario as a whole, but they're looking for support from local communities in their request to the province. So I don't see there to be any harm with respect to the request before us. I did read through the proposal and the different details to it, and certainly, there's certainly warrants the commemorative nature of what Stuart has presented. So nothing further to that, and we haven't been faced with a request like this. I know in other areas of the province there are commemorative namings to provincial highways. So the passing of the resolution, won't do any harm, in my view, to the proceedings of our corporation. Thanks.
Good. Thank you, CAO. Mover was Councillor Moore. Any questions or comments? Councillor Trim? None? Any other council comments from council? No, I think it's a worthwhile initiative, and I'm curious to see how other municipalities respond, as well as the province in this. So it'll be interesting to see. We'll have to watch. Excellent. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next item is, there's 3 information items. I'll ask the staff to provide just a quick summary of the first one, streamlining the approvals.
Yeah, so this, as we've seen with the province of Ontario, the different changes to regulations and legislation, seeking to make some changes to the Ontario regulation with respect to the Aggregate Resources Act in order to allow for existing pit and quarry changes without ministerial approval. So those changes would include importing recycled aggregate. Those bullet points is really what I'm referring to here. Adding or relocating entrances or exits, portable processing equipment or at aggregate sites, portable concrete and asphalt plants. So adding or removing or changing these concrete and asphalt plants, which are often controversial in communities. Adding or removing or changing above ground fuel storage at aggregate sites. So these are changes to the regulation that do no longer require approval from the ministry. So certainly for aggregate providers, should facilitate some of their operations. But again, keeping in mind that that some of these changes, some of the non-requirement for approvals might impact some of the adjacent land uses. So we need to be cognizant of that as well. Thanks so much.
Good, thank you. I'll do all 3 items and I'll ask for comments. So the second item is electricity supply facilities.
Yeah, no expert in this myself, but it appears that the IESO, the Independent Electricity System Operator, who work closely with municipal partners, have conducted a competitive procurement and resource acquisition initiative. What they're seeking to do is to develop a mechanism by which they could increase capacity to the tune of 1.3 megawatts in the short term, and so that was in May 2023. And what they're looking to do also is procure in the long term 2,500 megawatts of storage and 1,500 megawatts of non-storage projects onto the system. So not fully cognizant of how this, how our community could benefit from this by virtue of them supporting this increase in capacity, but just for correspondence with members of council.
Good, and I'll just note, I know Councillor Moore is tracking this item as well. Not directly responsible on the board, ORPC board, but you have eyes on the process, correct? Good, and the last item is just a study commencement for Highway 17 culvert replacement.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so, sorry, pull it up here. Highway 17, the MTO is proposing to do 3 culvert replacements. One of them, if you remember, we brought a staff report, report to council for using some of the township land. One thing I've asked the MTO and their consultant to have a meeting just to determine what is the public information that's happening. You know, like the one thing we do, I think, very well in our township is to notify public and have correspondence and signage, and also our webpage projects. So we want to understand what is going to be the communication, and we can bring back that to council at a future date.
Great, thank you. Is there any comments or questions from any member of council on any of those 3 items that were provided? Good. The only question I had was on the last one, and it triggered the culvert. I just want to make sure Muskrat Watershed Council is involved in that. That they are aware that they have an opportunity to comment on that study. Good. Excellent. We'll move on to the next item, item number 13. And if council will indulge me, I think we'll try to get 13 and 14 done. We'll take a recess after that before we go into closed, if that's good. Okay, so item number 13 is announcements, and I'll go in our formal seating order again. So I'm going to start with the Deputy Mayor.
There is a trivia night coming up here this Saturday night, and it's being put on by the Beachburg Agricultural Society, and I think it's a fundraiser trivia night, and it's over at the Heritage Hall. So if anyone would like to join and go, it would be a fundraiser for them. If anyone would like to put in a trivia team. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, just a couple notes. So Whitewater Historical Society on Saturday is having their plant sale. So if anybody would like to go out and support the Historical Society, that's one way you can do it, plant sale on Saturday. Yeah, we've had 2 good meetings with 2 of the prominent rec associations about our ice operations coming up, which we're going to hear about in a couple weeks. So met with the Cobden Rec Association and the Beachburg Ag Society, which those meetings went well and some good information passed around there. And then just the last thing, one thing to note, yesterday, 79th anniversary of D-Day. One thing that I think is kind of important to recognize and bring up for all the things that we kind of recognize at our meetings. You know, 79 years ago, a bunch of men stormed the beach at Normandy to fight for our freedom and secure our freedoms, and allows us to argue about some of these social situations day to day now. So it's something that I think it's just important to recognize 79 years later. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Bell. Councillor Olmsted.
Yes, I had the pleasure, both as a business person and a councillor, to attend 2 new business openings on the weekend. One of them is Whitewater Brewery opened a new Riverside pub in the old Rafters site. They did a tremendous amount of work to get the site ready. I think I heard 6 weeks of pressure washing and cleaning, and I stayed around a little bit longer to take part in some of the music and festivities, but very, very successful opening. And I understand their old site is being repurposed as well into another restaurant, so we're not losing a business, which is fantastic. The other one, new opening, was in town in Cobden here, a place called Our Hometown Store, right across the road from where we're sitting now. Tremendous shop, It houses a lot of arts and crafts, and many of the vendors that are included in the Sunday market in Cobden, or sorry, Saturday market in Cobden every Saturday. So you'll see lots of vendors in there, lots of fantastic workmanship. Interesting story that the owner, Ernie Wilson, and his wife, Ernie was actually born in the building, 60-some, sorry Ernie, I think it's around 60 years, 58 to 61 years ago. That Ernie was born upstairs in the building, and now he runs a shop in it, and his wife was born right across the road from the shop. So I thought that was a great little story that I had to tell. Further to that, just in the last couple of years, just to highlight, those are two new businesses that have been open in our region, but add to that, in the last couple of years, we've had Dante's Deli open on Main Street, where you can get some of the best subs and steaks and whatnot at a very reasonable price. You have Sour Joe's Bakery just up the road, where I won't eat regular bread anymore. And that's a true story. They've got some of the best baking and sourdough and other regular kinds of bread. The little coffee shop on the Scoop had new owners take over a couple of years ago, and they've redone that business. On top of Tim's and Subway and whatnot, just opening, I think last year, if I'm not mistaken, but redid that whole property. But we've had a lot of movement in business in our region for the last couple of years. And I'm just speaking in the Cobden area. I'm not even speaking the rest of the township, which I know some other new businesses. Sorry, I can't mention them all, but we've had tremendous growth. I encourage everybody to really support these small businesses, as they are the fabric and the heartbeat of our community. We really have to support these businesses. So I encourage everybody to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Moore.
I've got a few. May 26th, I was at an airport meeting, and that was a visit from the base commander and his entourage, so that's all I was there for, was a tour of the facility. June 1st, I have Otter River Power board meeting, and then we do have a meeting coming up for the shareholders on June 13th, which I know the invitations went out. The last power outage we had in Beachburg last week was 20 minutes, but that was not from Otter River Power's equipment. It was actually Hydro One. Nice to be able to say that. June 3rd, I did attend the grand opening of 37 Main Street, Cobden, which was our hometown store. I will be attending the Beachburg Rec Trivia Night at Heritage Hall in the Fairgrounds on Saturday night. Myself and former Mayor Jim LeBeau will be on the team. June 10th is the village-wide garage sale in Beachburg. That's this Saturday coming up. And June 14th, I will be attending a 100-year anniversary Beachburg Public School meeting. Still openings up there for people who want to sit on the committee. Please attend. It'll be at 6:30 at Beachburg Public School on June 14th. And I have my next Airport Commission meeting on June 15th. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Trim.
Well, I have nothing new, but I would just like to echo some of the comments that Councillor Olmsted made, if I may. I now consider myself a bit of an expert with respect to sourdough bread. I spent a week in San Francisco, and it is noted for its sourdough bread, but I can say, in all honesty, the best I've ever tasted is here. And I've been there today already. And the delicatessen also, Dante's. So yes, I certainly do support our local businesses, and it is nice to see that society is sort of getting back to the idea of being able to have successful small businesses like bakeries and butcher shops and that sort of thing in our communities, and that they can be successful. They can compete with the big discount stores, the big box stores. Love to see a creamery come back, things like that, where you can get local butter, and I don't know if that'll ever happen, but it certainly is nice to see what has happened. Thank you.
just to echo on to the farmer's market presentation that we had today. Another example of local entrepreneurs and trying to find ways that we can support them or partner with them to benefit the whole community. So it's good. It is a good news story. Good. I'll just add one announcement to this. Greater Madawaska, as many of you know or have been tracking through social media or the news, is that they have a wildfire situation in Greater Madawaska. And though I can't provide an update, the details are available online. Our thoughts are with Greater Madawaska. The CAO has reached out to his counterpart and offered our support, whatever that may be. And I believe they have reached out for CAO.
Yeah, so yesterday the acting CAO or CAO treasurer reached out and indicated that things had slowed down. However, I did get a message from our fire chief, Jonathan McLaren, that they might need some support. So I've connected with Jonathan, and we're going to get more details from Greater Madawaska in short order. But certainly, they have our support from myself to council. So that's great. Thanks.
Good. Next is our bylaws. Item number 14. We have 4 bylaws before us. Recommendation is that be it resolved that the bylaws listed on the June 7th, 2023 agenda be taken as read and passed. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Olmsted. Any comments or questions on any of the bylaws that we're passing today? None seen. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion carried.
May I say something?
Yes, please, Clerk.
I know you want to take a break, but I'm wondering if we should do a motion to extend because
Yes, that's a good
not
idea.
looking good.
344. Okay, can I get a motion to extend our meeting? And the idea is that we'll take a break, we'll go into closed, and then report after closed, and the meeting will be adjourned. So I'd rather just take right to 4:30, and we finish as soon as we can finish. So a motion to extend to 4:30 from Councillor Moore, seconded by Deputy Mayor. All those in favor? Carried. Good. Next item, closed session. Clerk, tell me, should we go into closed and then recess, or recess and go into closed?
We probably should recess first, and then we can go into closed.
Good, we'll take a recess to 3:50. Thank you.
It doesn't look like
Welcome back to the Township of Whitewater Region's regular council meeting for 7th of June. We just finished a recess, and I'll call us back to order at 3:50 p.m. And at this time, we'll deal with item 15 on our agenda, the closed session. We have two items listed, an unopened road allowance and a discussion about the Pembroke Junior A Lumber Kings Hockey Club. The recommendation before us is that the council of the Township of Whitewater Region will move into closed session at 3:50 p.m. as permitted in Section 9 of the procedural bylaw, with staff remaining in the room to discuss the receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, unopened road allowance. Litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, the Pembroke Junior A Lumber Kings Hockey Club Limited contract. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Olmsted, seconded by Councillor Trim. And all those in favor? It's carried, and we are now in closed.